Sup, YouTube? It's Aiden / Wow, whatever I call me. That was really awkward. I couldn't think of what to say. I'm here to talk today again for the 1000th time about all my Bach bass trombones. Yay, you guys go. Woo! Wait, I think we have a viewer calling. Yeah, what is it? There's another trombone in the shot? You sure? Yeah, let me check. Alright, when you guys saw it, here it is. Guess what? The Bach 50K3. That's right, 2 K valves in some kind of configuration. That was actually the stock Bach configuration. Ta-da! The 50K3 balanced valves. This is not my instrument, don't worry. I'm borrowing this from somebody who owns another 42K. The story behind this instrument is he bought it in college. This is sometime in like the 90s. And then he was like, wow, this is kind of hard to play, and sold it. And he recently bought it back again, and now I'm borrowing it for a couple days just to check it out. So I'm going to make this kind of like a little mini valve video. Let's talk about the history. Got my script right here with some information. The history of the K valve. So the K, or balanced valve, as Bach liked to call it, Bach Company, was developed by Bach over a period of many years, kind of as not a replacement, but as an addition to the line to their rotor valve instruments. They'd have been getting complaints about their rotor valve instruments just not being adequate for modern playing, especially in big orchestral stuff. And that's legitimate. The rotor horns, the rotor is just a little too small. And I think if they'd just come out with larger, better built rotors, it could have probably avoided a lot of issues. But nobody wanted that. They wanted new, fancy things. And so Bach put in the time and effort, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money, and came out with the K, or balanced valve. They only made these for a few years. I think the 90s to maybe the early 2000s. This is not offered anymore by any means. And so these are not super common. Not a lot of these were made, and the ones around today have probably seen a fair bit of use, or they haven't because they're really bad. I'm not sure. This is the first time I've ever actually seen one, a 50K3 anyway. I've seen my friend play his 42K in the Los Angeles Philharmonic, so they do get some playtime in high-level places. He's played his in the LA Phil. I know the principal of the Dallas Symphony, I think, plays one now, or has played one for a long time, a 42K. David Finlayson of the New York Philharmonic played a 42K for a long time. And there's some other players too out there who have played them. The K valve can be really good, and I think the 42K especially can be a lot better than just like a 42B. So the 42K, I think, can be really good. We'll talk about how good this one is in a second. The Miller valve is very similar to how this works. If you look up millervalve.net or .com, I think, you can find a website that's been up since like 1998 or something on the Miller valve. It has not changed this whole time. I'm not even sure if the company still exists, but the website is definitely still up. And you can see how they are pretty much the same, just a big old can with these awkward ports. So let's talk about how they work real fast. They're very similar to a Hagman or a Trubor in that they have a port that's kind of straight through the valve when it's unengaged. And of course it diverts just a little bit. The Trubor goes straight through. The Hagman has kind of a little bend, and this is kind of like the Hagman has just a little bend. But it stays the same size the whole time. So the open horn is pretty open. And then when you engage the valve, you get these nice little curvy guys that go to the attachment tubing. And they're nice and open too, and they're just kind of gentle. I don't think these have a 90-degree actuation. They're kind of like Hagman's in that it's 60-ish degrees, and I'm pretty sure these are very similar to that. There's not quite 90 degrees. So they have a pretty similar design. Obviously, the difference is that instead of the tubing coming out of the top of the valve over here, like on a Hagman or Trubor's being on their side, and Hagman's coming out the top. And that's just how they're put on the instrument. The ports are instead on the side of the valve. And that, I think, is mainly the downfall of the K valve. Maybe it's just the way people are thinking that this had to be on this end, and etc. The Hagman has to give up a bearing kind of to have it set up this way-ish. They don't really have to do that. But both the Truebore and Hagman have kind of gotten around it in different ways, and that makes the valves a lot smaller. Probably not as easy to make, but it really makes a big difference in how the valve works. And obviously those designs have stuck around a little bit better. Also, these are solid brass cores as far as I can tell. Maybe they're not, because maybe they'd be even heavier, but these are heavy, heavy, heavy valves. We've talked about the Hagman, how it's built and not milled out of a solid piece of brass. These are milled as far as I can tell, so they're really, really heavy, big things of brass. If you look at this, it's like you're basically looking at this is just solid brass. There's obviously stuff cut out for the tubes, 3 ports in there, but if you just made this a little bit smaller, you would still have just a giant hunk of brass, right? And there's 2 of these on this instrument. This is a heavy instrument. The Hagman is so light. Truebores are not especially light, and they're not especially heavy either, so they got around that, obviously. And of course, these end up kind of achieving the same goal as a Hagman or Truebore, but just in a different shape and kind of a less ergonomic shape. The tubing is pretty gosh darn neat. I really like Hagman tubing because it has all these broad curves and sweeps in it. And this is kind of similar, actually. If you look at the G-flat valve, that's this guy. These are on the opposite sides as a Shire's horn, or not a Shire's, but a Thayer horn, by the way, which is kind of confusing. The G-flat valve is still in the same place, but it's on the other side. Anyway, look at this beautiful 3D sweep right here. One piece of tubing that just goes shoo. I really love that. And of course, the F side has this really beautiful sweep around the bell brace, in front of the bell brace, and all the way back here. From here to here is one piece of tubing, which is pretty cool and kind of rare. I don't know why they actually went with this design, because like a lot of Thayer horns have this same kind of sweep that needs to come out forwards in the back, and they'll make it 2 or 3 different pieces. I'm lucky in that my Thayer horn has that sweep out of the first valve right there in one piece, which is pretty rare and pretty neat, I think. And I think these all came stock this way with these beautiful sweeps. I'm not sure why that is. I really like it. It looks really cool. It's beautiful, but it's an interesting design choice. So there we go. That's kind of like a little bit of history and a little bit how the valve operates. If you guys really want me to, I'll disassemble it and show you guys how it works, but I don't want to do that in this video. Up next, how does it play? So we're back again with the K valve on this instrument. So we talked about the K valve in general. Let's talk about it on this horn. So ergonomics, the K valve is super heavy, like really, really heavy. I would say it's the same or heavier than my stainless steel Thayers, which are very heavy. This may be maybe the heaviest bass drum horn that I've played. I'm not sure. Heavy, of course, means that it's balanced pretty far back, and I like that. So heavy doesn't mean a whole lot to me, but still, I feel it. If I play a really long gig where I don't care too much, I'll use my 50B2 because it's a lot lighter. These are really heavy, and that definitely affects someone's ergonomics on an instrument. If you don't want a heavy bass trombone, 50K3 is probably not for you. Obviously, the valves stick into your neck a little bit. I've played Truebores for a long time and Thayers for a long time now, and so I'm kind of used to having big protrusions sitting in my neck. So honestly, it's really not that bad. I assume it'd probably be different for different people that are different sizes, larger, smaller necks. I don't know. Maybe how they hold their instruments differently. For me, that's not a big deal. I just don't really care. Actually, I have a harder time now with instruments with just a gooseneck there. Maybe they have dependent valves or one valve, and I hold the instrument wrong. You can see me do that in videos. I like move my neck over. It's kind of weird. That doesn't bother me so much. The levers are really cool on this, actually. I don't know where these levers came from. Maybe there's a different company that developed this valve. But the first lever has this nice, really ergonomic paddle on it. I don't think these are aftermarket. I think these came with it. It's got this nice paddle on it. This only moves in one plane, so it's nice and easy to use. The second one, of course, has this wonky adjustable mechanism down here. This brass stock right here is just sliced off, and it's really sharp still. Weird design. And this lever is just super long. I mean, look at it. This valve is all the way up here, like 8 inches away from where your finger touches it. And it's just not super fast because the spring in this little guy right here is just tiny. I don't know why it's that small. It's just not big enough. I feel like this could be buffed out or buffed up, and you could just put a bigger spring in there, and it just would make everything easier. The F valve has a much larger spring, and this is the one that needs it. So levers aren't perfect, but overall ergonomics of that are really not bad. The valves are not fast. They're definitely not like green hose or something like that, but they don't have a whole lot of travel because it's like 60 degrees ish. And these levers are not bad. They're just not super fast. I took these apart, cleaned them out, oiled them, and even before they weren't bad, but now they're actually pretty good. Not the fastest valves. I'd say they're about the same as my Thayer's. So there's that. So how does it play? It plays really well, actually. And I think that's going to be the biggest surprise for everybody who watches this. I think that was me not actuating the F valve all the way, getting down to the C. I'm not sure what that was all about. But this plays just really well. It has the same kind of weight in the sound that my Thayer horn gets because the valves are really heavy. And I think that has a lot to do with how a horn responds and plays. I put the heavy valve caps on my true bores back in the day, because I liked how it played better that way. And this is very similar. It's very even across all the ranges. Good, the mid-range is good, the low range is good. I'm playing this with my Edwards slide because it plays really well with this slide. It also plays really well with the Bach slide, but I'm just more used to this setup. Seriously, it just feels really good on the face to play this. I'm probably not sounding super great. That's my excuse. I don't sound good. That's my excuse. But it really feels good. The valves are not nearly as open as my Thayer's. Like going from B flat to C, for instance. It's not hard. It's not a chore to do that. It doesn't feel bad, but it doesn't feel like I'm playing the same exact instrument when I move out to fourth position, like it does with my Thayer horn. And that might be why people didn't like these. You're trading out a lot of things, and not that much more playability, but I really do like how this plays a lot. The weight through the valves. This horn has a really good bell. Not all 90s Bachs have good bells. This one is really, really good. It plays really well. What did I want to say about it right here? I had something else. The response is just fast, especially for how heavy it is. It just feels easy to play. The resistance is just right. I'm not like falling into the instrument, which I do sometimes with that horn. And I'm not feeling it go, no, don't play, stop, which I get on some other instruments that I really don't like. This doesn't have that. Some people complain about these valves, including another YouTuber who has done a video about the 50K3. Not going to name him. He talks a lot of smack about the K valve without even having the instrument with him. These don't have that kind of like not fun resistance. The B natural is not the perfect note, like I feel like it is on my Thayer horn, but it's really not bad to play. If anything, it doesn't sound good right now, it's my fault and not the instrument, I think. The low range is great. The weight in the sound that I get from this is very similar to the weight I get from that horn. I love my Rotor 50B2, but like sometimes it just has it has like a fat sound, but not really the fist. Not the fist really, it kind of has like a smack instead. I like having the fist behind the sound, and this definitely has that fist. And it has a fist all the way throughout the range, not just when you put the valves down, which this horn can sometimes do. So yeah, I just can't say it's a perfect horn by any means, but I'm not going to say it's bad. I really think this is a viable bass trombone. Let's go on to the conclusions part of my 50K video. So real quick, before we get to the conclusions, let's talk about the length of this instrument. I've talked about the length of the bell section of a lot of different Bachs lately. Obviously, the 50A3 is too long in its stock form. It's an inch too long, and you can see that right here. This is not the 50A3, this is the K3, and it is still about a ½ inch too long from this receiver distance to bell distance. You can see just a little bit too long compared to this instrument. And this is what the stock length should be. This to this is what a Bach bass trombone should be. And this is about a ½ inch too long. Someone, thankfully, yeah, I had that about right. Someone thankfully cut the tuning slide, receivers and legs, on this 50K3. So if you look at the distance, the height of these instruments, not the valve wraps, but just the tuning slide height right here, you can see the 50K is a little shorter than the 50T. So it kind of makes up for that length. You have a little more wiggle room. I play with the tuning slide a fair distance out with the Edwards slide to get to the same length of instrument that I have with this. So 50K3, not perfect. They made the horn too long. I'm not sure if they realized that or not. I'm never really sure because it is Bach and they just kind of derp out. But thankfully this one has a cut tuning slide. I'm not sure if that's stock from the factory or not. It looks like this horn has been taken apart at least maybe once, but I'm really not sure. So that could be stock from the factory, in which case, good on you guys, Bach. You actually figured it out. Now on to the conclusions. Alright, so on to the conclusions about the 50K3. I had really no idea what this horn was going to be like. I've heard so many bad things about the K valve. I've really not heard any good things about them. And I've really just not heard a lot about them. The K valve is super hard to find. One of the first things I found when I Googled Bach K valve history or something is a post I made on the trombone forum 11 years ago asking about the K valve. And there's like almost no responses. That's kind of ridiculous that I didn't even knew it existed in 2007. But it's just kind of like there's a myth around this horn, and there's also just like no knowledge. Nobody even knows it exists. I'll bet a lot of you guys watching this didn't know the K valve was ever even made. And honestly, I forget it was made all the time because they're so rare. So I had the weirdest, I just had no idea what I was going to get with this instrument. And I was very pleasantly surprised. Once I lubed these up, got it all in working condition, put some grease on the tuning slides and stuff, and checked it out. This horn is really not bad. I can see why they were not fully adopted. The problem is these came out at kind of a bad time because they came out, Thayer's already been around for a little bit, and many improved rotors, not these obviously, but Greenhose, Edwards, I guess Edwards wasn't doing anything yet, rotors-wise. But a lot of stuff was kind of coming out. There were better valves. Hagman was going to come along soon, if it hadn't already. But And those are all just a little bit better design-wise. With the improved rotors, you got a more open valve that's got a nice quick throw. They're pretty light. With Thayers, you get a really open blow with some weight in the sound from the mass and the valves, and they're a little bit slower and a little bit heavier. And these kind of combine the worst aspects of both of those things. You get kind of like an improved rotor feel. They're definitely more open than rotors, but you get the really heavy feeling of Thayers. So you don't get the lightness of rotor valves being open like new ones, and you don't get the super openness of Thayers and being heavy. So they kind of combine all the worst aspects about the new designs that were coming out in that time. And that's just kind of sad, because I think the K valve was a step in the right direction for Bach. I think they made a good choice trying to design a new valve. They just maybe didn't go far enough and ended up with not quite the right design. With all that said, I would be happy using this instrument as maybe not my primary horn, maybe my primary horn if I had no choice. There are some horns out there that if I were left with them and nothing else, I would probably just not play. This is not one of those. I would use this happily and probably not complain a lot about it, except that it's heavy. Like if I were stuck with just this 50B, I would probably not be a happy camper. But with this, I'd be like, all right, I can play all the music I used to play and I would still sound pretty darn good. Yes, and that's pretty much all I wanted to say. This is kind of like my Thayer valve horn in that it's heavy enough that I would not really consider it for kind of like jazz use. The valves themselves are just a little slow, the valves are heavy, the sound is heavy, and it just doesn't seem to lend itself towards the brighter side of the sound spectrum. So it is kind of a one-trick pony, classical kind of instrument. At least this one is. There might be other ones with lighter bells and light slides and stuff that would kind of balance it out. But all in all, I would give 50K3 a pass. It is a pretty gosh darn good instrument, especially from what we've all heard. And I'm just super excited that I get to share it with you guys. See you next time.